It's funny whenever rock and roll heavyweights join together for a huge tour, it usually ends with their egos butting heads, and that was exactly what happened in the late 90s when Courtney Love's band Hole toured with Marilyn Manson. Also on the bill was Monster Magnet, whose frontman David Wyndorf described the tour by telling Louder Sound, "I knew it was going to be a complete effing disaster." Stay tuned for the full story. Late 1998 saw both Hole and Marilyn Manson dominating the album charts. Hole's new release at the time was Celebrity Skin, which was number 10 on the charts, while Manson's album Mechanical Animals was number 1 during the same week. Both albums also shared the same producer in Michael Beinhorn. The idea behind pairing the two rock and roll heavyweights came from Hole's management company Q Prime. Ahead of the tour being announced, Courtney Love was dropping hints in the press that she actually wanted to tour with Alanis Morissette, while her management company pursued Manson. Even before the tour was announced, Love and Manson had a pretty rocky relationship. It stemmed from Manson's 1998 autobiography titled The Long Road Out of Hell, in which the rocker had nothing nice to say about Courtney Love. Manson also had reservations about the offer to tour with Hole, as he would tell Enemy magazine in 1998. "Courtney never bothered to say hi to me until I sold 1,000,000 records. She's an opportunist, and I wouldn't consider her a friend. The way she's behaved towards me in the media has seemed very exploitative. I'm not interested in being anything to her," he'd say. That's not to say Love was a fan of the idea either, because according to an MTV report at the time, Love claimed she had reservations about the effect that Manson's apocalyptic shows would have on her daughter Frances Bean. In all fairness, both acts needed one another. Manson was dealing with the controversy and the backlash, some retailers who refused to carry Mechanical Animals over its controversial front cover, and the album, while successful, failed to meet sales expectations. Manson's label Sony Records was expecting the record to sell around 300,000 copies in its first week, but it only sold 230,000 copies despite peaking at number 1 on the charts. According to producer Michael Beinhorn, who told Louder Sound, it wasn't enough. The label lost interest. They took down the huge billboard they had in Times Square for the album. The president of the label called Manson up screaming at him for having tits on the cover. Hole needed Manson just as much. The tour would prove to be Hole's first major US tour, as according to the band's guitarist Eric Erlandson, previous attempts to launch a full-scale tour in the US had failed because they couldn't find someone to tour with. The bands agreed to tour with each other provided it was billed as a co-headlining tour and costs and revenue were evenly split. Manson would jokingly tell MTV why he agreed to the tour, saying, "There was some tussling going on, and then I realized what better role models to lead the youth of America into the new millennium than us too, so it had to be done," he'd say. Tickets for the shows hovered around $30 US, and the venues housed around 10 to 20,000 people. Titled the Beautiful Monsters Tour, it was supposed to run from February of 1999 to May of the same year, totaling 37 shows, but it unraveled after only 9 dates. MTV staff writer Gil Kaufman, who covered the tour, would remark to Louder Sound how different Manson and Love really were, saying, "Here you had two artists that were going for the brass ring in very different ways. Manson was in his glam metal apex and was being as debauched as he could, while Courtney had become a star with a Golden Globe nomination, and she'd made a much slicker pop album. She was trying to be the ultimate Californian rock star," he'd say. Kaufman would also remark how both groups attracted completely different crowds. According to him, Manson fans were cybergoth, whereas Hole's fans were hipster rock and, I quote, Coachella babies. Each crowd seemed to be repulsed by the other, and Manson's fans especially made their displeasure known to Hole during the band's set, which we'll get to in a bit. Despite all the hype around the tour, ticket sales were not that good. MTV would report that the opening night in Spokane, Washington, only saw the arena about half full with 8,000 attendees out of a possible 16,000 tickets. Also adding to the problems was the infighting between the bands. Divisions over who should open and who should pay them resulted in uneasy compromises. Manson wanted Monster Magnet to open, but Hole didn't, so Manson ate the cost of the opener. On top of that, to Hole and their management company, Manson's production was much more elaborate than Hole's, yet they were splitting the cost 50-50. And on stage, things were just as uneasy, as during the tour's second stop in Vancouver, Canada, Manson insulted Courtney on stage, and she would run up and jump on Manson's back during the live set. Later on during the same show, Manson fell and injured his wrist and ended his show early. And this is something that happened throughout the rest of the tour. Sniping between the camps became a nightly occurrence on stage.
February 28th in Spokane, Washington. But from night number 1, there was back and forth sniping, both in the press and on stage.
Did you guys have time to take a nap during Hole?
When we're done, some guy with a blue head is going to come on with a big sign that says drugs.
Manson's makeup was just one target of Courtney's jabs. She also knocked his use of pyro and his alleged lip syncing. While from Manson, there were plastic surgeon cracks and remarks about Courtney's age.
And I show pity for the older people on this tour. The grandmothers.
Tonight he made another grandma crack.
He said a grandma. That guy is a year and a half younger than me.
Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm grandma, he's grandpa.
And the bands also conducted themselves much differently backstage, as Manson and his bandmates were known for their hard-partying lifestyle, including illegal substances. Courtney Love, meanwhile, was fresh out of rehab and trying to maintain her sobriety. And soon enough, the tour was making headlines for the wrong reasons. The tour fell apart after only 9 shows, as Hole played their final concert with Manson on March 19th at the Inglewood Forum in Los Angeles. Love would announce from the stage that night they were finished with the tour. So it begs the question, why did Hole leave the tour with Manson? Well, the Tampa Bay Times highlighted several issues that led the band to leave the tour. According to the Times, it was a combination of poor ticket sales, infighting, production issues, and Manson's fans that were to blame. Hole would leave the stage early in Portland, Oregon one night after Manson's fans booed the band during their live set. An editor of the website Polestar was quoted as saying, "The pairing looked good on paper, but it may have not been the best idea. Manson had been getting a disproportionate amount of the audience, and Hole was playing in front of an audience that wasn't that appreciative," he'd say. Peter Mensch of Q Prime Management claimed to the Times that it was production cost overruns. Mensch would claim that they underestimated the cost of Manson's elaborate stage production, and since the production costs were deducted before the band split the money, the tour was in the red, revealing, "We couldn't have afforded to stay on the road. We would have lost $150,000 to $200,000 by the end of the tour," he'd say. When Hole left the tour, Manson and company continued playing live shows under the new moniker The Rock is Dead Tour. The next several years for Hole would be pretty difficult, as the band's label Geffen Records was merging with Interscope. The type of rock and roll that Hole was playing was no longer a priority at the label, as they turned their attention to rap and metal. So you're maybe wondering, whatever happened to Marilyn Manson and Courtney Love's relationship? Well, in 2014, 15 years after the conclusion of the Beautiful Monsters tour, it seemed like Love and Manson had patched up their differences. In December of that year, Courtney Love posted an image on Instagram of her with Manson and Smashing Pumpkins leader Billy Corgan with a caption that read, "All hatchets buried." And in a 2015 interview with Esquire, Manson elaborated on the relationship, saying, "We never really had a falling out. We've always been weird with each other because she slept with pretty much every one of my friends supposedly, not me though." In 2018, Love would appear as a nurse in Marilyn Manson's video for Tattooed in Reverse. So that does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again tomorrow on Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.